Hey y'all, it's me again. Here we are once again in my studio. That's right, we're in the studio today. Well, I mean, we're always in the studio. This is a studio apartment. It's just one room. I literally have one tiny room cuz I'm poor. It's fine though. Money isn't real. It's not. Um Moving past that, the whole conceptual statement that money is not real. Welcome to the Direct Action Gaming Channel. Once again, my name is Sean. We play games here, but today we're not playing a game. Today we are painting. That's right. I'm going to paint with y'all today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my painting process and the current project that I'm working on because I wanted to get something out, but I have a lot of painting that I need to do, and I figured it might be neat to sort of talk a little bit about my painting process. Now, I should start by stressing that I am by no means an expert painter. I don't know all the things when it comes to miniature painting. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at this point. I'm like a novice slash intermediate, perhaps. I know a few things about it, more than your average everyday person. All that to say, hey, if there's something I'm not doing right, just let me know in the comments. Give me some feedback, please, because here's the thing, y'all. That's how you learn how to do stuff. Michael Jordan was not Chicago Bulls material when he first picked up a basketball, if you can believe it. Right? So I picked up a brush a few years ago again. I painted Warhammer stuff when I was a kid. Unfortunately, I never really got too deep into that. Like, I was just sort of doing it because I wanted my figures to look good on the table, not so much I really loved painting and all that. But now that I am older, wiser, and I have a slightly better control of my ADHD, I am a little bit better at finishing projects. And I also know how to appreciate the artistic aspect of hobbying, shall we say. And hey, art is just human expression, y'all. When you make a thing, that's art. You did an art. Okay, so yeah, let's do some art. Let's do some art. Let's look at the table, and I'm going to show y'all what I'm doing. Okay, so let's flip this view around so you can see the workbench. Here is my workbench, which I know y'all have seen before in some of the shorts I've done for this channel when I talk about projects that I have finished and whatnot. Yes, this workbench is messy as all hell. Yes, it is. I know that. Like I said, I have ADHD. So us ADHDers, we tend to pile things. Okay? It's kind of how our brain works. I'm at a point now where I'm 45 and I've kind of settled into the notion that I'm never going to be like in a thoroughly neat, completely organized environment. That is probably never going to happen. But hey, here is my workbench. Here is the project that I am working on. I have made some progress actually because here are the runners. I've finished them already. What we're doing here is we are repainting the Zombicide 2nd edition core stuff, right? So here are the runners. They are done. I repainted them. I might need to try and brush off some of the varnish that I sprayed on them, but that is why they are done. I have repainted them, put some wash on, blood effects, and yada, yada, yada. sprayed varnish, and now this is like a legit game piece that can be used heavily, and I don't have to worry about the paint job getting screwed up too much thanks to the varnish that I sprayed at the end of the process. So we're going to talk about that, the process. All right, here's the runners. We have also finished the brutes. I got 16 brutes now. They are all done, or rather, they're done again. I've decided to try and do some new color schemes and all that jazz. So I'm hoping once all of this is done, my zombie hordes are gonna look just a little bit better on the table here. That's the overall goal, more or less. So all right, I'm gonna set y'all up on my little tripod here. Hold the phone while I do that. We're going to pause. Okay, here we go again. All right, so now y'all can see the workbench. You can see all the things for the most part. What we got here is current project, the Abominations. We're working on patient 0 for the moment. I already finished the base coat on the other Abominations. We got the unhoused person here, and or the whole Abomination, the Abomina Wild, and the cop Abomination. We did base coat on those. And that is what we're doing here. We're finishing the base coat, which is the first thing that you do. Now what we're doing here is layer painting. As far as I'm aware, layer painting is kind of like the OG style of miniature painting. It's what Games Workshop came up with once upon a time as a sort of standard method for painting models. From what I'm told, it's kind of what beginners get into when they first start painting. There are other painting techniques that utilize other things, but pretty much anybody can do layer painting. I would like to think. It's a fairly straightforward process. And really, literally, all you're doing is base coat, you put the colors on the model. Okay? Now, I make that sound very simple, but there are some things to there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to putting paint on a miniature, actually. I had to learn that the hard way. You got to learn about thinning your paints and or just exactly how thin should they be. Because, for example, over here, we have our wash, Vallejo Game Wash. I bought a whole bunch of this. Some people dip their models in this, but hey, wash is an example of an extremely thin paint. So this is what I mean when it comes to thinning your paints. If you thin your paints too much, it's basically a liquid and it runs all over the place. Now, wash is designed to do that because you want it to actually just not cover everything and only get into like the recesses so that you get yourself a bit of instant shading there. So wash is one step of the layer painting process. But when you start out, you're just doing the base coat. So when you're base coating, you want a nice happy medium between thin and thick. So when your paints start in your tube, whatever kind of paints you're using, if you're using acrylic paints, whatever kind of brand it is, whatever sort of container it comes in, acrylic paints do need to be thinned, because when you squeeze them out, it's literally like a paste. It's goo. Okay, so it's possible, if you're into the tabletop hobby space, you've seen beginner paint jobs where the model is almost unrecognizable because the paint somebody was using was just lumpy as all hell, right? And that's because they didn't really thin their paints. You want the paint to be thin enough so that it kind of glides on and it covers the area, but it's not so thick that it like obscures the details underneath. So that's one of the keys to base coating. Another one is your brushes. You want your brushes to be well maintained, and you also want to learn a thing or two about which brush to use for which step of the process. Now, personally, the way I've been doing it so far is I tend to really only use like a couple of brushes. Okay, like I will use a size 1 brush when I'm starting, and I'm told a size 1 brush can be used almost universally for a lot of things. But I usually start with a size 1 brush, because that way we can take a model like this and we start with, like, for example, on patient 0, we would probably start with like the skin color, because that is the most dominant color on the model. We start there because we just get it all over the place. We slather it everywhere with the size 1 brush. And now we're done with the skin, and then we can eventually move to like the smaller, more detailed bits, like, his IV that's stuck through his chest. That is an IV pole that's just rammed through the guy's chest. Yep. So there's that. Although what's kind of neat about these Abominations from 2nd edition is if you look really closely at the details, you can kind of see that, like, excuse me, what's actually happening more often than not with these Abominations is like their skin kind of absorbs, in a way, certain things that they had on them before they became infected. Like on patient 0, like just below the IV pole, I'm trying to get this centered so that y'all can see. There's like a little belt that's like, you can see it's inside his skin. It got like absorbed. So it's sort of like a blob type thing that's like growing. That's where they get these giant muscles, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so you start with the size 1 brush and you do your main colors, and then you move on to details. Once you're doing details, of course, as you might imagine, you then want to use like a much smaller detail brush. So this is a 10-0. And this is about as small as they get for the most part. Usually I'm using like a slightly larger detail brush, which is the 3-0 size. Okay. And that's where we're at right now. We're doing the detail phase on patient 0. Now, beyond selecting the right kind of brush, as I said, you also want to make sure that your brushes are well maintained. And the reason you want to do that is not just so that they last for a while and you don't have to keep buying new brushes all the gosh darn time. You want a nice point on these brushes. You don't want them to be like split and frayed all over the place, because especially these small detail brushes, you want a fine point on them so that when you're doing tiny things like, I don't know, the little IV like hoses on this patient 0 here, like the tiny little straps for like his neck brace and all that, you're going to want to have a nice fine point on your brush so you can get that stuff on there. Now, maintaining it is literally as simple as having a pot of water for the most part. The water can serve dual purposes here, right? It can help maintain our brushes, and it can also help to thin our paints. Now the camera's shaking all over the place. Great. Anyway, you want to have wet brushes when you're working with acrylics. Okay, you want to thin your paints, you want to maintain your brush. Another thing you might want to consider, soap. Yes, they literally have brush soap that you can get. All you got to do is open it up, and this is kind of how you want it to look eventually. There's going to be a bunch of paint that gets rubbed off of your brush when you're cleaning it with the soap. That's kind of how you know the brush is now clean, okay? And that's the deal, right? Brushes get messed up for the most part when you have paint drying. When you have paint drying on the tip here. Okay, that's how they get frayed, especially if you allow paint to dry, like in the, this part right here, I think they call it the ferrule. If paint gets all up in there and dries, like your brush might be done, okay? So just dip it in water as you're painting, and you're gonna wanna apply the soap every now and again and wash it off to try and keep that nice little point on there, okay? Now another thing we got here is the wet palette. This isn't just a palette, it is a wet palette, okay? Now, mine isn't perfect, okay? Like, this, ideally this sheet on top of it should be like flat, okay? And plus I kind of keep the same sheet like for days on end as I am doing one figure. So some of the paint dries a little too much, but the idea behind a wet palette is that it will take longer for your paint to dry. Great, I got a nickel in the silver there. That's awesome. I have the nickels on the edge to like try and keep this sheet on the top like flat, more or less. You can see it doesn't really work that well. I'm not an expert, by the way. Did I mention that? Anyway. You can literally make your own wet palette, by the way. It's not that hard. You just need a tray and a sponge, more or less. A nice flat sponge. That's all this really is. You put some water on the nice flat sponge in the tray. You put one, like a thin sheet like this. Like, I think they call it hydro paper or something like that. But you can get packs of this, like hundreds of sheet on Amazon for pretty cheap for the most part. So we keep our paints on the wet palette to try and keep the paints wet for longer, basically. So that's what that is. All right. Now another thing is glasses. These things right here all by themselves really change the game up for me, okay? Because it's basically a magnifying lens that is attached to a headband that also has a UV light on it. Okay, so We've got a battery indicator here that'll turn on. Once I turn the thing on, there's actually 2 levels of brightness. 1, 2. So that's kind of cool. And we can recharge this easily with a USB-C cord. Okay, you can just plug this in and it recharges and you're good to go. No batteries necessary. And this fits over my head on top of my glasses fairly well. And when I look at the model, I can see all the little details that much easier. Such a game changer. Okay, so let's get started here. It would be really nice if I could make some good progress on the details for patient 0 here. Now, I've done most of the things on patient 0. As you can see, there are a few details left, and there's probably some minor corrections that I need to do, but we got the skin and his bandages and the IV stuck through his chest and the leftover, the remnants of the hospital gown that he was wearing once upon a time. We've got most of the colors on here. There's just a few very small colors here and there that I want to do. And on top of that, what I have found is usually you're going to need to do like several, at least a few coats for each color. Now, it can vary sometimes depending upon like what paint you're using on what surface, but you more often than not, you want to do a couple of coats for each color to make sure it's nice and solid. Okay, you want a solid look on there so that it you don't want it to look like a model that just has paint on it. You want it to look like a little person on the table, hopefully, is what you want, okay? So we literally just need to maybe touch up a few colors here, do a few corrections, and there's some edge work to do on like his braces and I think the IVs and also these little like EKG things that he has stuck all over his body. I think that's what those are, right? Because each one is supposed to have like a slightly different color on it for the lead, just like you would see on like an EKG machine. Okay, so where did I leave off, y'all? And this is really just how I do it. I just pick it back up again and just think like, all right, which color should I do next? I might want to touch up on the bandages a little bit once again, perhaps, so I can see some of the. Oh wait, I still haven't finished the straps for the for some of these braces that he has on his arm. So let's go to black. We have a whole lot of black to do on this model anyway, because there's these straps and there's also the edges for his braces. So let's do that. Okay. Trying to figure out how to do this in such a way so that I can see and y'all can see. There's a few straps on his knee here. By the way, I've also heard people say this is a great way to learn how to do stuff and or record yourself doing something, maybe even live stream it, put it on the internet, and see what kind of feedback you got. Now, the important part, of course, is distinguishing between the actual positive, constructive, shall we say, criticism, feedback that is intended to help you grow and learn as a person, and the trolls, shall we say, the trolls that are just trying to make you feel bad. Oh, another thing I should probably point out, you've probably already seen this, a handle, okay? A handle can come in handy, especially when you're doing models like this that have a whole lot of detail that you want to pour in there. You can probably see right now why a handle comes, well, in handy. Because it's a lot easier for me to hold the figure and to see what I'm doing with it, right? So I got this one from Citadel. It's a Games Workshop thing. I think I ordered it on Amazon. All right, let's do the little strap here. Black is too thin. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can see it's kind of getting all over the place. We don't want that. We want it to be, we want to be precise with the paint when we're applying it. We want to know exactly where it is going. But hey, if you make a mistake, that's fine. You can just correct it later. You are probably not going to get this perfectly correct the first time you try it. It's fine. Okay, so that's the strap. And then there's like these little... Yeah, this is not... Once again, like I was talking about earlier, we don't really have a fine point on this. This is supposed to be a nice, fine point. Now, as you can probably already see, this is a process that can take some time. You need to have a decent amount of patience. I guess when you're doing any sort of artistic endeavor, really. But definitely mini painting as well. You are painting a very small thing. It is challenging. A lot of things could go wrong. Like I said, when you make a mistake, you just correct it later on. Okay. So those little, there was these little grooves I was trying to get in his braces. So I have black in there, and I'm probably going to have to sort of dust over it with some white later on, so that it's not like splotchy and whatnot. And then now we want to like sort of just trace the edges of the braces. Trace the edges. Once again, if you mess up, it's not that big of a deal. You can just literally correct it later. Okay. Now, another good piece of advice I got about mini painting once upon a time is you never have to paint all the things. I liked that advice. I think I heard that from a guy whose channel is called Tabletop Minions. That's a neat little channel. If you like tabletop stuff, you might want to check him out. He's been doing this for way longer than I have, but he made a video about like why, kind of explaining why he doesn't paint eyes. And it wasn't just about painting eyes, it was also about like this expectation that some people try to fulfill eventually when it comes to mini painting. And I'm somewhat partial to this myself, but this deep need to like just get everything perfect and represent all the things and whatnot. And you don't have to do that. Not if you don't want to. If you do not want to make this process super complicated, it doesn't need to be. It can just be nice and simple. I mean, in my experience, as long as you just put like a few colors on your minis, that can be a game changer all on its own. Just having a little color on the tabletop. Okay, cool. Progress, progress, progress. And that's what I try to do in general. If I am a little bit better at mini painting now, it is of course because progress, progress, progress. Practice, practice, practice. I try to do a little bit of painting every day if I can, really. I usually have this habit of starting my day with a little bit of painting, and sometimes I even finish my day with a bit of painting. If I have something really simple to do, like just applying wash to like 20 miniatures, that's probably something I'll do once I get home. Because even though I'm tired and it's the end of the day and I just want to relax, like just dumping a bunch of wash on some minis really isn't that hard. So I'll do that once I get home. And I don't know, nowadays I started getting back into tabletop for a lot of reasons. At least part of it was, man, wouldn't it be cool to be a YouTuber and just be able to work from home on stuff that I love? Obviously, that sounds appealing. Obviously, everybody would love to just get paid to just sit at home and do cool stuff that they love. So that was one aspect of it. But over time, obviously this is something that I love. Not just because I love games and stories and all that jazz. There is definitely a communal aspect to tabletop gaming that you just do not get with the more digital forms of gaming. Let me move the camera a bit so that it is easier for y'all to just there. See, I will know that y'all can see what I'm doing if I can also see the camera. Isn't that an idea? Okay. Okay, so we've got all the edges on his little brace here. His neck brace, at least, anyway. There is... Let me see. I like to consult the game art as I paint to see, like, am I doing this correctly? Trying to get a bit of inspiration. Are there little details on the mini that I am missing that's in the art? So I might mess this part up, but there's some stripes on this sort of chest brace that I am... See, this 10-0 brush does not have a point on it. It does not. That I am running into the very problem I was talking about earlier. It does not have a nice fine point on it, and that is making the detail work harder. So I guess I need to follow my own advice. Practice what I preach. Maintain these brushes a little bit better. And I don't know, sometimes, like I said, it doesn't need to be perfect. Sometimes if you just do literally anything at all, it will look better than just a big gray slob. But I kind of like how when you're painting minis, it starts out as this sort of like big gray blob kind of. It's sort of kind of formless in a way. I usually compare it to like carving a statue, if you know what I mean. Like you start out with this gray blob that's like a stone, I guess, in a way, and as you paint, you're discovering all the various contours and details of the mini. Because sure, like, you can look at the box art, the game art, as something of a guide, but I've also noticed that, like, the miniatures never perfectly conform to the art, because of course they don't. Because, like, the artist and the sculptor are not always the same person. And stuff that you drew doesn't always translate very well to, like, a three-dimensional chunk of plastic that you need to, like, sell at, like, scale. Like, you don't want them to break very easily, I would think. I don't know if you can hear it, but I do live in an apartment building, and one of the janitors is in the hallway right now, just vacuuming away. So there's that. Okay, and I'm trying to get... I'm not checking to make sure that y'all can see what I'm doing. This is something... This is something we're going to have to get used to if I'm going to do these painting vlogs. Figuring out a way to paint the MIDI so that I can see, and that y'all can see too. I'm just noticing once again, it is not in frame. Okay, this is what I'm doing right now. This bit is tricky. Underneath his arm. That's what we're trying to get. Okay, now another thing that you might want to consider, I might as well show, and you might have seen, is light. Okay? The way it was explained to me, you probably want a setup like this, where you can get light coming at the miniature that you're working on from multiple angles. So, but besides the little UV light that I have, I've got these lights on my workbench that are pointed in multiple directions at the miniature that I'm trying to paint. Because you don't want shadows to be obscuring all the little details that you need to be able to see so that you can put color on them, of course. All sorts of little things that you need to consider as you are doing this process. Now, much like with when you begin painting, like I was talking about with the size 1 brush, you just slather a color all over the place. When you're detail painting, doing these tiny little straps and whatnot, for example, you don't need to really, like, obsess about getting it perfect the first time, in my experience. So if you get one color splotching on an area where it's not supposed to be, that's probably fine, because you can just correct it later. Okay, so I think we did all the edges here with the black, so I think that's good. All right, so we're gonna move on to something else now. Let's dip the brush. Let's get these models away from the from the little water pot. Want to keep this brush wet. All right, so next up, let's do his little hospital gown. I'm gonna grab some more amethyst. Or do I need to? I think I might need to put some more down. Honestly, this amethyst is starting to look pretty dry. So we're gonna grab one of the tubes here. Here's the amethyst. All right. I'll put this down here. There we go. Just squeeze the tube a little bit. And I usually take my size 1 brush, get that nice and wet. So now we've got a little bit of water on the brush. Well, a little bit more than usual, because I dip it in the water and I don't try to dry it off at all. And then I just kind of swirl it around in the paint. And as we can see, it's thinning up just a bit. Probably going to have to do this at least one more time. This is probably good enough for now. We will get some more water in here from the detail brush. Clean that size 1 brush off. Grab this here detail brush. Get a bunch of water on it. We'll split this around a little bit. And with the detail brush, I'm being careful not to dip it in too much, because remember, you don't want that paint to get all up in the underneath the metal tip of the brush, which is, I believe, called the ferrule. Yep, that's what it is. Nailed it. Anyway, now usually what I do is I dip it, and when you're dipping it for the first time like this, you probably want to like test it out a little bit on the side here to sort of, you want to see what how opaque it is. What it's gonna look like when you apply it to the miniature. So remember, you don't want your paint to be too thin, but you also don't want it to be too thick. Now, another YouTuber that I was watching, I think her name was Lila Mev or something like that. The miniature witch, I believe she calls herself. But yeah, she does a whole lot of painting, and she's the one that really helped explain to me the importance of thinning your paints. And she tests her paints just on her hand. Like she'll usually wear like these sort of nitrile gloves, I suppose, I think they're called. Hospital type gloves, right? She will paint on those, like on her wrist and whatnot. Okay, so there's definitely this part on the back here that I wanted to get. This is, you can, I don't know if you can see, there's this part right at the top, like on his back in the middle here, waist, that's like not completely solid, that I'm trying to make solid. Because I had to sort of paint over some beige on that portion, because I guess I kind of thought that might be a bandage and not his gown, but now I'm not so sure. And I guess that's what I was talking about with the three-dimensional nature of what's going on here. Sometimes you're not sure where like colors are actually supposed to start and stop. And that's why it's important to get over the fear of like making a mistake. Because making a mistake while you're painting really isn't that bad. In fact, it's kind of part of the process. Because like when I put a color on for like detail painting, if I get over the edge, now I can kind of see that edge a little bit better, right? So when it comes to like a sleeve on an arm and I'm not sure where the hand begins, or for example, on this model where we've got these bandages on the arm, maybe sometimes you're not sure where the skin begins and where the bandage begins. You slosh on some paint and it can become a little bit more obvious where the edges are. Get that paint on there and spread it around so it's not all lumpy and whatnot. Thin your paint. When I was starting out and I was posting some of the stuff that I was doing, and I thought it looked really cool, and that's how art usually works. You get started on the thing, you put a lot of effort into it, and you're like, yeah, this is dope. Look at this thing that I made. And then other people are like, well, that's okay. You really should thin your paints, though. I heard that a lot. You really should thin your paints, though. All right, we're going to switch back to the size 1 brush here to slather a lot more blue on to make sure we got a nice solid coat on. Like I was saying earlier, part of this is you want to pick the right brush for the job. So detail brushes are nice when you're doing tiny little straps, but if you're doing something bigger like this, like the hospital gown, we want a slightly larger brush with a bigger, I heard one person call this a belly, right? When your brush is larger, you have more area to have more paint on it, and then you don't have to dip it as often. So when you're painting larger areas, you will want larger brushes to have more paint to just splosh all over the gosh darn place. My camera's shaking all over the place once again. want to be careful to avoid some of the details that we have on here, the legs, the bandages, the EKG cords, things of that nature. Splash, splash, splash. Get a nice solid light blue amethyst color on here. This is probably like, I don't know, maybe the 4th time I've done this when it comes to the hospital gown here. Making sure it's a nice solid color, as I said. Okay, we're probably going to have to wrap this up soon. It is 10:40. It is a work day for me, and I got to take the bus. So what else can we do before it's time to go, though? Let's try to do at least one more thing, shall we? I'm going to get another color on here for some of these little EKG things. Let's get some other colors on here. So, crimson red. Let's consult the art again. Because we've got yellow, red, and I think blue. We already have blue, we just don't have yellow and red. So let's get, I guess scarlet red should be fine. Slightly lighter red. That's another thing about painting. Color, color, color. You want to know your colors. For many, many reasons, of course. Not just for determining color schemes for the things that you are painting, but also if you want to get creative with coming up with new colors by combining several colors together. And yes, that is definitely a thing that you can do. For example, on the Abomination here, you can see there's see how there's that boom. It's literally like a wrought iron fence that's like stuck in his shoulder. And yes, those are birds that are just sort of perched on this man, this abomination that used to be a man, shall we say. Anyway, the point is, that's not just straight silver. I looked at the art and it looked more like sort of like an iron type of color, like an old timey iron gate. So I was like, all right, let's take silver and we'll mix a bunch of like really dark phthalo green in there to get like a slightly darker tone for the gate that's stuck in his shoulder. So that's a good example of like basic color mixing to get like a slightly different effect. Anyway, so let's see. Let's get our red mixed up here so we have it on the palette and that it's nice and wet. And we're going to want to transfer it on there with a little detail brush. I think we'll switch to the 3-0. It's technically slightly bigger, but it might have a slightly better point on it, shall we say. Let's see if I can have a slightly easier time directing where the paint is actually supposed to go with the 3-0. Shaky camera. Okay. So let's get some water on the 3-0. Okay. Get a little paint on here. Okay. Yeah, this is already starting to look like a... Yeah. Somehow the 3-0 is doing just a little bit better. So, okay, we're going to try to get just a little splash of red on the very tip here of like these little EKG thingamajigs. So that's one. And we've got 4 on this side. Yeah, all right. So here's what we'll do. We've got red here. And we'll put red on his back over here. Just on the tip. Okay. All right. And once again, we can see why this is a time-consuming process, because all we needed was just a few splotches of red, and that took a little while, didn't it? Because we had to put our red paint on the palette. Oh, Harry. Oh, Harry. Here he is. Okay, there he goes. Here he's trying to get to his little spot underneath the workbench. I thought he was going to knock over my coffee. Anyway, so let's go straight to blue next, because we already have that on the palette, and then we'll try to get a bit of yellow on here, and then we're going to wrap this shit up. Should we do... Yeah, we'll stick with the amethyst. It's fine. We can reuse this color. We can reuse it. Go back to the amethyst. All right, and then we'll try to get... let's see... This one here. Just dab a little blue on there. All right. Maybe I can do that one there, and this one here, and then yellow on the other two. Put a bit of amethyst right there. Just a bit. I will almost certainly have to go over this once again. Okay, get a little over there. Might take a couple of... Yeah, like I was saying, it depends on the color. For some reason, when it comes to amethyst, like that almost never goes on nice and solid the first time, and then you have to touch it up once again. Yellow is another one. I swear, yellow is always an experience. Okay, we've got primary yellow here. We're going to try that one out. Plop that down. Get that ready. Yellow is especially challenging when you're trying to put it on black. I swear, yellow just doesn't go on black. There's a tip for you right there. If you ever want to try to get into this, yellow does not go on black. So it took me a while, but I'm eventually getting into the habit of not painting yellow on black right away. Like if I need to do that, I will get some other medium like white or beige or something like that, paint that on, then paint some yellow. So like, for example, I'm probably going to do that with the base here, because you can probably see there's a bunch of gunk all over the base, partially from like wear and tear, because like I said, these are some really old paint jobs. I've did these a couple years ago, but also from, the painting I've been doing. There's colors from the gown and the feet and the bandages and just all sorts of gunk on there that I'm going to want to paint over. But since it's yellow, we're going to want to do white first to try and cover up all that gunk, and then paint some yellow. Because sure, this base is yellow, but it has gunk on it. So we're going to do white first. Anyway, so yeah, let's mix up this yellow over here. Get it nice and mixed with that water from the size 1 brush. Now, once I do the yellow on some of these bits, I'm fairly certain I have all the colors all over the place. Like, all the colors are where they are supposed to be. And then at that point, it's just sort of correcting them, which is something that you can do in the base coat phase, but you can also just do it after you do the wash. You can just get the color on, do the wash, and in the highlighting phase after the wash, then you can worry about maybe like fixing some of your mistakes. Okay, so we're going to try to get a few splotches of yellow on here. We're going to be painting the yellow on the base, so that should go on okay, I would think. All right. And another one over here. Okay, cool. So that's all I'm going to do for, well, wait, no, I lied. We're going to do one more thing. Just one more thing. There are these little labels on the IV bags. There are 2 IV bags. There's one on that sort of stand that's going through his chest, and then there's one that's like on his like leg, I guess, some kind of way. It's situated on his upper thigh, hip type deal here. We're just going to get a bit of white and put that okay, we're gonna want to reapply a bit of water, I think, to this white on here. Just reapply a bit of water to it. Once again, this is a time-consuming process. It is. Oh, these projects take me a while for a reason, y'all. It's not just because I'm not an expert yet, and there's a lot of things I still need to learn. It is just, there is no super quick way to do this, really, unfortunately. All right, we get a little more water in that white. Now it's going on a little bit better. Okay. All this just so that we can do just one or two little labels here, and we're probably gonna have to do white once again for like these braces. I'm gonna have to do that later on, but for right now we're just gonna do these little labels on these IV bags. And once again, I can see it's not going on. It's not a totally solid color on here. Some of the turquoise is coming through, which is fine, because you can just let that dry and apply a little bit more white later on. And the way I usually do that is just simply saying, all right, cool, now let's go to another color, let that dry, and return to that little white portion that needs another coat. So, all right. That is our painting session done for the day. Let me grab this camera here once again. All right. Now I thought at the end of the video, besides doing all my usual plugs and whatnot, we're going to do the plugs, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about these abominations and why I chose like the color schemes for them that I did. Oof. Yeah, here I am with my little dorky painting glasses. Let me turn that off. All right, so if you're still here, if you're still listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope this one turned out okay. If it didn't, I guess I just need to try a little bit better next time to make a good painting vlog so that y'all can see clearly what I'm doing and whatnot. And I'm sure if nothing else, you maybe heard what I was saying and picked up a few tricks when it comes to painting, and that is pretty cool. Painting is dope, and I think what I was about to try and start saying earlier on, but it's hard to talk while I'm also concentrating on trying to paint the model. So some practice is going to be required here. But what I was trying to say early on is I'm almost seeing painting now as like a meditative process and or a way to engage my brain to do something with my hands. And I'm really starting to think that nowadays it is very important for people to have something like that to do. Because what I've been hearing is the internet is not great for our health, as odd as that might sound. Phone bad. Maybe the boomers were kind of onto something. It seems that when you're just sitting around doom scrolling all day, that's not great for your mental health. So as long as you can have like a hobby that can also consume your time so that you're not staring at screens all day, that's a good thing. So fine, it doesn't have to be painting, y'all, but if you can find some sort of other hobby to do besides just watching TikTok, that would be cool. Try to do that. And one reason why I'm doing painting and tabletop gaming is have that hobby that I can engage myself in so that I have a way to keep my brain going, basically. But also, hey, tabletop gaming, like I said, it's very communal. You sit down at tables with people. You sit at tables with people and you talk to them. I know, right? Wow. That's wild nowadays. Why would you sit at a table with people and talk to them? All right, so plugs. we're gonna wrap this up. Blue Sky and Ko-fi are the two main ones for the channel. Ko-fi is my donation site. Links for both of those things will be in the description. If you want to throw me a few bucks because you like what I'm trying to do here, throw me a few bucks on Ko-fi. And it will go straight into my bank account, and I would appreciate that. Now, I would understand if nobody has a few extra bucks in this economy in America to just give to some random person on the internet, so that's fine. You do not have to give me any money. If you could, though, that would be great. If you could support the YouTube creators that you like what they're doing, that does go a long way. My Blue Sky is another place that you can go to see what I'm up to with regards to these behind the scenes sort of hobby aspect of the games that I play on the channel here. So you can see pictures of all the models that I paint once the project is finished. Of course, I also do my shorts on this channel here to really highlight the completed project, but each model as I finish it will go up on my Blue Sky usually, so you can see a good close-up of all those models that I paint that will be featured in the games, yada yada yada. Okay, so also DSA, another link that I always put in there. I am a dues-paying Metro Detroit. Great, I just doxed myself. That's my chapter. DSA. Democratic Socialists of America. That's an organization that you can join. You can join them. You don't have to. You should, though, honestly. Like, if you are a left-leaning person, and you do not have to be a democratic socialist, okay? That's just a label. It doesn't really mean every single person in DSA is a democratic socialist. There are lots of different types of people in DSA that you will meet, but I recommend, if you are a left-leaning person, go to a DSA meeting, because if nothing else, that's you going out and meeting people. I can guarantee if you go to a DSA meeting, you will meet people. You will have conversations. You will get involved, because that's what we do. Like, when new people show up, we tell them, hey, how about you get up in front of the group and tell us who you are and why you're here? And then we do these little breakup groups and working groups, and you'll go and find things to do with other people and show up to meetings and talk about stuff. And all of this is good, if nothing else, for your mental health, to be talking to people. Okay? So, yeah. It's also good for the country, I think. America's having a moment. All right. Things are kind of bad in America, in my opinion. All right. A thing happened to Charlie Kirk, and that's all I'm going to say about that. There was a thing that happened to Charlie Kirk, and, you know, he's dead. So there's not much else to say about that. DSA, you can join that if you want. Link is in the description. Palestine, I'm going to talk about Palestine again. There is a link for Palestinian medical aid in the description as well. Check that site out. Vet it if you want. That's fine. That's perfectly understandable. But that link, if nothing else, is an excuse for me to talk about the issue of Palestine at least a little bit at the end of my videos, because it is an ongoing issue. In my opinion, it is kind of the issue of our time. It is that important. There is a genocide that is happening right now in the Gaza Strip. Israel is doing a genocide. They are starving millions of people to death. That is a thing that is happening right now. You should care about it if you're an American, because your tax dollars are funding that genocide. How about I say that again? Your American tax dollars are funding a genocide. You should be angry about that. You should wonder why that is happening. It's not easy to explain why that's happening, but there is a reason for it, and it's not good. Okay? Our government knows a genocide is happening. It knows that. And it thinks it's fine. The American government is fine with a genocide happening in Gaza. That should make you angry. Okay? So if you can give some money to that site, that's cool. What would be even cooler is if you can talk about Palestine to other people. If you can look into the matter yourself, like I did, and figure out, hey, Israel is not just defending themselves here. Okay? That narrative is bullshit. All right? So those are the links. Click on them if you want to. Click on all the other things too. Subscribe, like, comment, yada, yada, yada. Let's get to the bonus bit, shall we? We're going to talk about these abominations. Okay. So we've been looking at Patient Zero for a while now, because this is the one that I was painting. I don't have much to say about Patient Zero other than I'm kind of disappointed that, like, here, let's see. Let me show it to you. The card that we have also been looking at, the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed, Patient Zero has no special rules. No special rules. Patient Zero. This is supposed to be the first guy that got infected with this weird virus that apparently has the ability to, like, mutate people into these crazy Hulk-like monstrosities. And there's nothing unique about this guy? Really? All right. So yeah, I just used, I got this Zombicide paint set once upon a time, and it literally comes with Abomination skin. So I decided to use that for Patient Zero, because it's like, it seems like a very pale-ish sort of skin tone. So I'm like, all right, since he's the first guy that got infected, he's like super dead. He's been dead for a while, so he should have some exceptionally pale skin, right? So that's the deal with Patient Zero. Moving on. We got the Cop Abomination. Okay. Now for him, I used, where the heck is it? Amber? Where is it? Here it is. I used amber skin. Now I got this Army Painter War Paints set that just straight up has various skin tones in these little bottles that are just more or less good to go. So you don't have to go through the paint mixing trial and error of trying to get like the perfect sort of skin tone by mixing multiple things together. You just kind of know, all right, so this tone looks Caucasian-ish, I guess, so we'll use that. And yes, it was intentional. I'm like, all right, cop, so he's white. I want to make the cop look very white. Because controversial take, American cops have always been a force that primarily exists to enforce whiteness. Okay, America is a white supremacist nation. It always has been. It still is. Cops serve primarily to enforce the white supremacist structure that we have in this country. Now, I know that's an extremely controversial opinion, and I don't care anymore. I really don't. That's just what it is. Okay, white supremacy is a thing. It is not just some dumb Klansman or something like that. It is the whole country. It is how the entire country functions. We do have a racial hierarchy that still exists in this country. So that is why the cop is white. Moving on, we've got the Abominable Wild. I used, where the heck is that? Jasper skin. Here we go. Jasper skin from the Army Painter set for the Abominable Wild. So that way I can get something of a Hispanic sort of skin tone here. And once again, that was intentional because I figure, all right, if this is a lawn care individual, if this is somebody with a leaf blower on and all of that jazz, let's make him Hispanic. Because that way we can comment on the whole day laborer thing that we have going on here in America. Free labor is the cornerstone of U.S. economics, y'all. And sure, landscapers get paid for what they do generally. But what's important to understand is our immigration system here in America works a certain way for a very definitive reason. Okay? Our politicians love to flatten it and simplify it and just say well, you gotta be the citizen that comes in legally with the you better come in legally. If you're here illegally, that's bad. And you okay, but here's the thing. There's a lot of things that don't come up in this discourse about coming here legally to be a citizen and blah, 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 blah. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that we don't talk about. And for the most part, people from the global south and or all those countries to the south of America, okay, South America, Central America, Cuba, Haiti, blah, 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 blah. Those people come here because they kind of have to. Why do they have to come here? America intentionally destabilized their countries. Socialists call that the imperial periphery. Yes, America is the imperial core. Countries like Brazil are the imperial periphery. Now, I know Brazil is its own country and they have their own government and blah, 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 blah. Do not be naive enough to think that America does not have the ability to lean very heavily on a country like Brazil to influence their economic policy and just everything that they're doing. Now, in a nutshell, if you want to understand what I'm talking about, take a good look at the country of Guatemala, how it works today, and especially the role that the United Fruit Company had in shaping Guatemala to what it is today. And also, especially, why did the United Fruit Company change their name to Chiquita Banana? Why did they change their name? How did that? Look into that. if you will. And then you might understand better why people from the global south come here, and you might hopefully also start to understand why this country very intentionally makes it very hard for them to come here legally. It's, spoiler alert, it's so that they can stay in a limbo of sorts where they're here, they're allowed to work, but they constantly have the threat of deportation hanging over their heads. And this works for a lot, even the people that come here legally. That's a thing for them too. Just because you have a work visa here in America does not mean that you are good. It means that you are here so long as you keep your boss happy. Companies absolutely use those visas as a means to threaten their workers into doing stuff that they don't want to do. Basically, just working much harder and much longer than they would like to. But if they want to keep their job here, they have to do that. Anyway, that's all that to say, yeah, that's why the lawn care guy is brown. The lawn care guy is brown because systemic racism. Okay, so there you go. Once again, we can talk about systemic racism with the Abomination. That name in and of itself is not great. Hobo is kind of a derogatory term. Okay. It's problematic, you might hear some people say. This person is black. Once again, very intentional. I used onyx skin from the very same war paint army painter set, once again, for the Abomination, and or, I mean, I guess I have to call him that because unhoused Abomination just doesn't sound as good, right? Anyway, we used onyx to make this a very black man. Because, again, systemic racism. And I'm sure if you looked at the statistics for what sort of demographic in America is affected by homelessness and or the perpetual housing crisis that we have in this country the most, surprise, it's black people. That black people literally are the most affected by homelessness. Okay. Again, systemic racism. That's a thing. That is a thing. Redlining, for example. Look into redlining. That's a real thing. That is one rock solid example of how systemic racism works in America. All right. So I'm giving y'all a bunch of breadcrumbs to follow if you aren't familiar with these terms already. To maybe, if you want to follow those little breadcrumbs, you might learn why people like me become a socialist. Because it is only socialists that will talk about things like systemic racism or the emergency reserve force of labor. It's really difficult. I have heard many people point out, and I think it's accurate, it is really difficult to understand the modern world and why it works the way it does unless you can do a bit of Marxian analysis, shall we say. Okay? Socialists are not socialists because they don't understand how capitalism works, in a nutshell. All right? In fact, socialists understand capitalism far more than anybody else does, in my opinion. And the basic reason for this is because socialism literally only exists as a response to the system of capital. It's an attempt to address the inherent contradictions in the system of capital that is causing all these awful things that we keep seeing in this world, such as the genocide in Gaza that I keep talking about. Okay, so, Anyway, there's my little cultural critique at the end of the video. I guess we also talked a little bit about like color scheme too, since I was talking about which color in particular we were using for these guys and their skin tones, but also, oh gosh, what was I going to say? Yeah, we talked about color schemes. Can you tell I'm very new at this YouTube thing and I'm still trying to figure it out? Anyway, so yeah, here is the painting session done. Oh gosh, I gotta get going. It's like 11:20. I'm probably gonna have to drive to work today. Jesus. I'ma see y'all later. Take it easy. Take care of each other.